All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, my goodness. I'm warmed and indeed comforted by your recorded applause. Hello, everyone. Great to have everyone here on this busy day. It's a Wednesday. We are live every day for 2 hours. What about it? East Coast, 2 to 4 in the East. What about it? West Coast, 11 to 1 on the West Coast. I bring with me, indeed, treasures from a foreign land, spices and treasures. The spice is all Albert.
Albert, thank you.
That's right. Albert is the spice. And the treasure is all Kim.
Kim, how are you?
Yes, Kim is here with her chit. Yeah, she knows what she doesn't like. She's not really sure what she likes, but she knows what she doesn't like. And she is here to chit us.
I blame you.
All the way to the finish line. John Rothman joins us in hour 1 today. And the return of Rothman will bring much to talk about. And in hour 2, a special treat. Holdover from his normal spot on Tuesdays, the best-selling author and Pulitzer Prize winner, David Cay Johnston, joins in hour 2. So there's a lot going on Capitol Hill. There was a major press conference that had this odd configuration to it because it brought together people you normally wouldn't think would share a cause and a microphone. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ro Khanna. We'll get to that in a moment. Also, so many of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking operation. I wanted, before I got into the heavy stuff, to give a shout out to so many who join us today. My new thing, Kim, is to try to give a shout out to like the first person in the chat. But I lost track of who that was.
That's David Jenkins this morning.
David Jenkins. What's up, David?
And he said this. They're not going to release anything substantive. I've lost all trust in Dems and Republicans.
I believe there's a lot of magical truth in David Jenkins' comments.
Yeah,
so,
that was at 3:29 this morning. He said that.
Wow. That's really early into the chat. Yeah. That's commitment to be first into the chat. But of course, you're right. And likely the Epstein files conceal so much that's damning, not just in terms of all of the men primarily, right, that are associated with this human trafficking operation and part of these shattered lives is what you're really seeing. So many of these victims have had their lives shattered. Some have taken their lives. Many, have, with the sad facts of their life being what they were. They were vulnerable to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's predatory instincts. And as a result, when they came through that, they didn't really have the mechanism, the instruments in their lives to right things, to seek therapy, to do the things that might give them some relief. And so it's tragedy on tragedy. You've seen that sort of thing when you talk about what's happened in the Catholic dioceses across the world. They paid out, in Los Angeles alone, they paid out $1.5 billion. In LA alone,
What?
The Catholic diocese, $1.5 billion. That'll give you some sense of the immensity of the struggle that so many of these victims are dealing with. So you saw some of them, and we'll play you a bit of this in a bit. But anyway, to David Jenkins, who was first into the chat, to his comments. Yeah, so there's so much here, and so much is concealed in those files. And who knows what's in the files is the very people who were clamoring for the files to be released, right? Pam Bondi. We played you the video of her demanding that the files be released. All the Democrats, the Democrats, the QAnon conspiracy targeted Democrats, they were behind all of this. And that's why the Epstein files haven't been released under Joe Biden. Release them. We'll release them. Kash Patel says, I'll tell you where they are, those files. They're at the FBI. They know everything. Demand that the FBI release those files. Kash, you run the FBI now. You're the top guy. I know, I can't believe it either. You probably can't believe it, Kash Patel. You probably wake up every day going, I can't believe it. I'm just a blowhard. And somehow I blew hard enough that Trump made me head of the effing FBI. I mean, I didn't even know where the men's room was at the FBI, and I'm running it now. Okay, great. So now, release those files. You said the FBI should release them. And then, of course, Dan Bongino, same story. So all of these people, Trump included, who was demanding transparency. It's all a Bill Clinton thing. It's all a Biden conspiracy. You know, they can continue to be in control of everything now. And now there's no there. And Bondi is like the worst liar ever. You know, she says they're the files on my desk. Turns out it's a big nothing burger. The videos are all just of Jeffrey Epstein, right? And then on the Epstein suicide, which of course was not a suicide, the 1 minute gap, they went through this long explanation why there's a 1 minute gap there, why you're not seeing 1 minute of the hour of surveillance tape. And it's explained, oh, that's because it's got to recharge and all this other stuff. So there's a 1 minute gap. It's nothing to be concerned with. There's just a 1 minute gap all the time. Every 24 hours, there's a 1 minute gap. Turns out that's not true either. The 1 minute gap recording was just released. So Pam Bondi can't keep her story straight. She knows one thing. Her North Star is protecting Donald Trump. And that's why you'll never see these files released. He wants no part of them. Anyway, that's one of the things going on. Morning Remarkable, says Francine P. As does Ricky Aubert 1. He's an OG. Great to have Ricky in the mix. Amy says, good morning, Remarkables, is his message. Marjorie Taylor Greene gave a fiery speech, another side of her that, quote, crosses political boundaries. Impressive. Yes, nothing here making that point in the chat, and it's true. And we'll play a little bit of Marjorie Taylor Greene in a morning. Everyone, says Sue Ann, we're working on getting your name spelled correctly in the credits at the end of the show for everybody who supports us on Patreon and PayPal. Anyway, thanks everybody who was part of the scene early this morning and jumped on board. We've got a lot to get to. As I mentioned, David Cay Johnston, hour 2. We've got John Rothman, the professor, in hour 1. And we'll get to that in a moment. By the way, the White House response to the video of things being thrown out of the White House window, there was this, it looked like a trash bag or carry-on bag size thing that was thrown. You saw it, Albert, yesterday?
Right out the window, whatever.
Yeah, right out the window.
Boom.
In the second story of the White House, there is a window from which they threw this, you know. As usual, these guys are the worst liars. And they can't keep their story straight. So we showed you the video yesterday. Maybe Albert can rally it again today. But so everybody's got their own theory as to what this could be. A White House official said it was a contractor who was doing regular maintenance while the president was gone. Yeah. So that, first of all, suggests that the content is real, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes relevant in a second, because when Trump was asked about the video during a press conference yesterday, he said it was the first time he'd heard about it, and it was clearly, immediately he said, it's AI generated.
Yeah.
They're all heavily armored, those windows, they don't open. Here you go. Albert's got the video up now, and you can see the, something falling from that second story. And
Yeah,
then
that's what he said. He said the videos are bulletproof, that they're so heavy, there's no way you can open the bullets in that, or the windows in that type of that area of the White House, the residence.
He said, in fact, my wife was complaining about it the other day. She said, I'd love to have a little fresh air come in, but you can't. They're bulletproof. Well, it's interesting that she said that because she lives in New York. So I'm surprised that she really even responded to anything going on at the White House, and she doesn't even live there. Anyway, and then he went on to an AI riff. Donald Trump said it's the kind of thing they do. One of the problems we have with AI, it's both good and bad. If something happens really bad, just blame AI. But also they create things. It works both ways. If something happens, it's really bad. Maybe I'll just have to blame AI. I mean, he's kind of thinking through his excuses for being caught doing stuff ahead of time. So that story just is one that we'll obviously never know the truth on it, but it is one that seems to be, it's like a Rashomon. There are several different interpretations.
Until someone starts selling, one-of-a-kind valuables from the White House, it almost smacks of like a heist. You just throw it out the window. I'll catch it on the other side.
It does. It has that feel like somebody was running out of the MAGA merch store with a bunch of stuff that they didn't want to pay for. You know what I'm saying? And that could be what's going on here. It's Trump an inside job. Hats.
There you go.
Yeah, it's an inside job. By the way, again, I'll recommend it. This is Coachella Valley coffee that I'm drinking today, and it's absolutely awesome. This is the Ocotillo Espresso. It's a little, sorry, I've got this horrible cold. It just will not go away. Hang on one second. Kim will entertain you for a second while
I will ask a question while you do whatever you need to do, which is, do you think all the people that are the MAGA people or that watch the Fox News and heard yesterday that, 30,000 pages of Epstein files have been released, do you think they realize that it's all the stuff that is already public, that has already been released before? Or do you think they look at that and go, see, that Trump, he's so transparent, he's got this?
I think I think even within MAGA Nation, there are levels, I think the platinum level MAGA follower doesn't care. It's just Trump, Trump, Trump. We love you, Mr. Trump, whatever you want. Kind of like a Pam Bondi sort of almost religiosity to the kind of allegiance they feel to Trump. And so for them, again, at the platinum level, I feel as though it's not going to matter. I think there are a bunch of people, the kind of Rogan level people who are part of MAGA because they've become disenchanted with government. They've seen the way that governments let them down. They buy the BS about, government can't get anything right. There's all this waste, fraud, and abuse. They're kind of Elon-ish people. I think for those people, this is a pretty big cover-up that they're watching in, to use the phrase, real time. They're watching this day after day, and in watching it, they see that there is a deliberate obfuscation. There's a deliberate kicking the can down the way. There's a deliberate, look at this. I've got all of this Epstein stuff in my right hand while I'm hiding the real Epstein stuff in my left hand. I think, so I think it depends where you are in MAGA Nation. That would be my take on it. They're not monolithic. They obviously, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is a great example. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a true Trumpy. She loves Donald Trump. But if you listen to her today, she is demanding, she is a signatory to all of this, to this demand to release the files. But the batch of files released yesterday related to Jeffrey Epstein stem from that subpoena from the House Oversight Committee. We told you about this, the James Comer thing, and then when they came back into session that we would likely be talking about this again, and that's exactly what's happened. Anyway, the subpoena was issued last month, and they released 33,295 pages of records yesterday. It's supposed to be what they're calling the, quote, first batch of documents from the Justice Department. So, by the way, that'll give you a sense of how voluminous this whole thing is. That's just the first batch. It's over 33,000 pages. The content isn't clear immediately, but as, a lot of people have now gone through it. it looks as though the files had already been made public through court filings and other releases. All this stuff is already out there. So there are no revelations. There are no pieces of evidence that are new.
There was a public records request made in Florida, and most, if not all, of it had been put onto the Florida Attorney General's website in compliance with that public records request. And so all of this stuff that they released yesterday that they made a big deal about, oh, the 30,000, it's all been seen before.
I see. Yeah. And in fact, Robert Garcia of California, congressman, top Democrat on that committee, said this is all to, quote, distract from their continued White House cover-up. The DOJ releasing the interview between Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell is desperately seeking a pardon from the Trump administration, he went on to say, and cannot be trusted. He said DOJ's limited disclosure raises more questions than answers and makes clear that the White House is not interested in justice for the victims or the truth. Democrats forced a bipartisan vote to subpoena the Epstein files in their entirety, he said, and the administration must comply. There is no excuse for incomplete disclosures. Survivors and the American public deserve the truth. Garcia says only 3% of the files released were new. 97% were already public. So they're trying to technically comply with subpoenas, but you can see what's happening here. Let me play you a little bit before I get to Brother Rothman at the bottom of the hour. I'll play you a little bit of the press conference this morning. First, I'm sorry, I missed that. Harry Magnan with a super chat for Treasures and Spices and Kimikazes and martinis at the Red Jack. Love this show, says Harry Magnan. Thank you, Harry. Big shout out to you and everybody who supports the show in every way. Super chats and super stickers are a great way to support the show. Even after hours, you can support us. Romania Animal Rescue Inc. Come on. A $20 super sticker. Big shout out to you.
Really nice.
Romania Animal Rescue Inc. And Eugenio de Arnal. What about a $5 super sticker? Man,
big shout
come
out.
on. Thank you. Ricky Obear, who is an OG of the show, Ricky Obear 1. Coachella Valley, Sumatra, made with Ghirardelli's Majestic and my homegrown White Christmas. Caffeine, cocoa, and cannabis this morning. Wow, I get it. Oh, is that
Where
what?
are my weed smokers at?
So, Albert, help me through this. You're a younger person adjacent to some of these references. The Coachella Valley Sumatra is the coffee, right, which is delicious. The Ghirardelli's Majestic.
I think that's the cocoa.
That's the cocoa, right, with Ghirardelli chocolate. And then the homegrown White Christmas, does that relate to, is that a pot reference of some kind?
Yeah, it's probably the strain or the type, yes.
I see. Okay, good. Well, thank you. I'm a big fan. Anyway, a quick cup. So good. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. I use our discount code Mark T. If you get over there, knock around on the site. They've got all these tasting profiles on all the beans, hand roasted. This is fresh crop. This isn't discounted bean. There are a lot of discounted beans on the internet. You'll find organic coffees that are discounted wildly because they've been lying around for a long time. You want fresh coffee. If you want a rich, bold taste, or you want a truly textured taste, go to their website and you'll see these remarkable beans, remarkable offerings, and it's curated so beautifully. Again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, Mark T at checkout. Now, before I get to the presser, I did want to mention what's happening in Florida because I just can't believe it. And yet I can. In the new America where we turn back the clocks to 1950, Floridians now are getting an order from the state's Surgeon General that will end vaccine mandates for kids. The state's Surgeon General is a vaccine skeptic, to say the least. He's an anti-vaxxer. Joseph Ladapo is his name. And he said that the state vaccine requirement is going to be repealed. So children in Florida no longer required, would be the idea if it's repealed, to receive vaccines against preventable diseases like measles, mumps, chickenpox, polio, and hepatitis. He just made this statement this morning.
I mean, I just can't. You think about how many deaths that will mean. It's horrible.
He likened the vaccine mandates to slavery. Ladapo, handpicked for this role as Surgeon General of the state by Ron DeSantis, the governor, longtime skeptic of the benefit of vaccines generally, and has previously been accused of peddling scientific nonsense by public health advocates. So in his announcement, he said that every state vaccine requirement would be repealed and that he expected this move would receive the blessing of, if you guessed God, give yourself points. Yes. Every move would receive the blessing of God, he said. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery, Ladapo said. He altered data, to remind you, this is in the middle of COVID. They altered data in Florida about COVID-19 vaccines to exaggerate the risk to young men who took the COVID-19 vaccine. We know that because of a whistleblower who was then run out of the state. There was a jihad against this whistleblower. He said, people have a right to make their own decisions. Who am I, as a government or anyone else, to tell you what you should put in your body? Our body is a gift from God. What you put into your body is because of your relationship with your body and your God. Man, if you're not there to help me as the government, to guide me toward good health as to what I should put in my body, then why do you have that job? I don't understand. If you're just going to say it's between you and your God, do whatever. If the scientific community has demonstrable evidence as to the efficacy of vaccines, polio, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, these are deadly illnesses. And if we have a vaccine, again, that has proven effective, don't you feel a public responsibility as a public official in government to mandate that kids have these vaccines?
Is he a public health official too?
He's the Surgeon General.
That's right. Mm-hmm. What's his point in life then? What's he doing?
Exactly. I mean, are you just, you're living, I'm paying for you to be there. To do what? This is him, for those who are curious, at his press conference. Well, the reaction has been swift, and you can imagine it's been stern. I saw one quote. Of course, it's anti-vaxxers are praising this, but the professor of law at I believe in San Francisco said since the 1980s, all states had school vaccine mandates. If Florida abolished this mandate, it would be the first in recent times to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But there doesn't seem to be a law introduced yet. So, again, you can, and there's a lot of this now in the new America where there are a lot of public statements made, but then the law isn't actually introduced. We'll see. And it's noted by this legal professor that one reason all states adopted these mandates is that evidence showed that school mandates reduce and prevent outbreaks of disease. If Florida does this, it's creating an unfortunate natural experiment with its children as guinea pigs.
That's right.
Children deserve better, is the point. Of course, that's true.
So if I'm a mom in Florida, I'm going to vaccinate my kids, but I still have to think about, because vaccination is not 100% that your kid's not going to get it. It's all about herd immunity, right? And
Exactly.
so then do I really have to think about, one, do I want to live in Florida and send my kids to school there? Or do I want to homeschool or send them to some kind of school with vaccine mandates, like a
Right.
private school? I don't know. But I'd be seriously concerned if I'm a parent in Florida today.
I think that that concern would be well placed.
Mhm.
Absolutely right. That's the situation in Florida. It just broke a couple of hours ago. We wanted to bring you up to speed on that. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I wanted to share with you a little bit before I get to Brother Rothman. I want to get a little bit into what was happening on Capitol Hill today. I think it's really a landmark moment when you see all the victims from the Jeffrey Epstein case. When I say all the victims, I mean so many of the victims. Obviously, all the victims are, so huge in number. You couldn't even assemble them there. And this is a sophisticated operation. It was a transnational operation. It was an international human trafficking operation. But the horror of the victims' lives and what was wrought upon them it's moving. In fact, just before I get into it, I'll just note Nancy Mace, who herself was a victim of sexual abuse. She sat down with the victims on Capitol Hill and had to leave the meeting, or as she left the meeting, she's in tears. Here she is. You can see her in those of you who are watching on YouTube, shaking her head. She's in tears. The testimony and these stories are so powerful that she was moved to that kind of emotion. So she's, I think, reflecting what is truly a horrifying series of experiences that these women have been through.
Then why is Nancy Mace still such a big trumper?
And Marjorie Taylor Greene is a huge trumper. Excuse me. That's one of the things about this that
Mhm.
I think begins to point out how transcendent this story is.
I mean, I have sympathy for Nancy Mace. Says she went through something horrible less than 2 years ago, obviously triggered by this, so upset that she comes out of the meeting crying. And I feel horrible that the people went through that, and also that Nancy Mace went through something awful and, is still emotionally fragile, which she may be for life. But then it doesn't it doesn't compute why then you don't take the side of the victims in this case. If you're so moved by it that you would run from the room in tears, then how can you then back someone accused of these heinous crimes?
Well, this is when you talk about backing someone accused of these heinous crimes, you'd have to fill that out. I mean, you're saying Trump, you're accusing Trump of sort of being a co-conspirator, or what are you?
Well,
I'm
the
sorry.
victims have accused him. I
Right.
mean, in the tranche of documents that we already know is public, there's testimony where people have accused him of doing some awful things.
Right.
So, right, it doesn't make sense to me how you could cry in one moment and then turn around and say, "But Trump."
Yeah. Joan Hollywood says Mason MTG are responding as women, not politicians. Yeah.
Mhm.
But Kim is onto something, which is that then the emotion of the moment evaporates and you get back to the politics of life, and it gets pretty ugly. Play us a little bit of the press conference again. This is extraordinary that you saw this kind of collection of people across the political spectrum coming together to demand the release of these Epstein files. Go ahead, Albert.
On this issue. This is an issue where they both have shown real courage and
This is
leadership,
Ro Khanna
and I
speaking,
appreciate
Democrat
them
Ro Khanna.
joining us today. Congressman Massey,
This is Congressman Massey, and of course, he's a
I want
Republican.
to thank
He's
my
the one
colleague
behind
Ro
this.
Khanna for co-leading this effort to bring transparency and justice for these victims. I hope my colleagues are watching this press conference. I want them to think, what if this was your sister? What if this was your daughter? When these survivors speak, the Washington establishment is asking the American public to believe something that is not believable. They're asking you to believe that two individuals created hundreds of victims and they acted alone, and that the DOJ has no idea of who else might have been involved, that nobody else did anything that rose to a criminal enterprise. The American people know that's not true. Now, the Speaker of the House just offered a fig leaf to my colleagues. They're going to vote on a non-binding resolution today. that does absolutely nothing. I appreciate the efforts of my colleague, James Comer, who's leading the Oversight Committee. They may find some information, but they're allowing the DOJ to curate all of the information that the DOJ is giving them. If you've looked at the pages they've released so far, they're heavily redacted. Some pages are entirely redacted. And 97% of this is already in the public domain. So I'm calling on my colleagues, be one of the next two who sponsors this discharge petition. I think it's shameful that this has been called a hoax. Hopefully today we can clear that up. This is not a hoax. This is real. There are real survivors. There are real victims to this criminal enterprise. And the perpetrators are being protected because they're rich and powerful and political donors to the establishment here in Washington, D.C. So today we're standing with these survivors, we're giving them a voice, and I want to close by thanking them. They are brave. I hope they encourage other survivors to come forward and to tell their stories, not just of Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell, but anywhere in the country. This is a message that we are sending. This is a litmus test. Can we drain the swamp? Are there people who are outside of the reach of the law? I don't think there should be. So hopefully today we'll get 2 more signatures on the discharge petition. That's all we need. And with that.
Okay, very, very good. I mean, so those are the leaders who are spearheading it. But as I say, Marjorie Taylor Greene was part of this today. It was quite extraordinary to hear her, and she even remarked on the fact that she was teamed with, this bipartisan effort to release the files, and I thought she spoke pretty well. I mean, again, I'm not a fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's a true Trumpy. This is kind of what we were talking about before, but she spoke well. The White House has issued an order that if any Republican attempts to pursue the Epstein files, says Jeff Eastwood here in a chat, it will be considered a hostile act against them. Wow, just wow. That's exactly right. Jeff's right. I was going to get to that. The clapback from the White House is pretty extraordinary. I mean, it kind of takes the curtain and pulls it all the way back to say, if you're demanding the release of these files, if you sign on to this congressional effort to release the files, we will consider that a hostile act. I mean, just how do you spin that without in any way giving up the true narrative, which is that Donald Trump is desperately frightened of what's in those files? It is the full range. We've gone from there's no there, right? Oh, that's a hoax. Oh my God, it's a Democratic hoax, or as they would say, a Democrat hoax. Trump said that. He said it repeatedly. Bondi said there's no there. Bongino said there's no there. Patel said nothing. So these very same people who were talking about transparency and the release of these when Biden was in power, they're saying there's nothing there. Now we've gone all the way over to, if you demand the release of these files, we will consider it a hostile act. That should tell you how desperately frightened Trump is and this administration is about the release of these files and the demand that the information in these files be released. Is this a Truth Social post, Albert? Is this what this is?
No, this is a news story that I found, and this is the quote: helping Thomas Massie and liberal Democrats with their attention seeking, while the DOJ is fully supporting a more comprehensive file release effort from the Oversight Committee, would be viewed as a very hostile act to the administration. That, according to a spokesperson for the White House.
Yeah, there you have it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll come back to this. I do want to play you a little bit from the victims, and I wanted to play you a little bit from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Both those things we'll do when there's time in hour 2. Right now, maybe we'll have a minute or two with Brother Rothman, but I definitely want to get to Rothman, and I'll get David Cay Johnston in the on deck circle. So you'll permit me to to move on for now, but we will discuss this with Rothman and Johnston both. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I will ask you to do the right thing, Americans. If you're a patriot, smash that like button
with your iron rod.
If you're a true patriot, you'll smash it like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
If you give us a thumbs up, it helps us in the YouTube universe. I know it's crazy, but it costs you nothing, and it's so easy. And if you're watching live, or if you're watching after the fact, or listening after the fact, thumbs up just helps us, again, to make things happen. This guy just finished a, I don't know, I guess he says it was a vacation. We'll query him quickly about that, but then we'll get his take on so much of what's going on in America at the moment and around the world. He is a lecturer, a historian, our former colleague from KGO Radio, John Rothman, everybody. Let me start with the Epstein thing, John. This does seem to be a thing that Donald Trump cannot escape. The stink of Epstein is all over him. He knows it, and MAGA Nation knows it. He's lost some supporters, some high-profile supporters like the Joe Rogans of the world. I'm curious as to how you think this might game out, because it feels as though he can't quite outrun this.
Mark, I listened this morning on CNN. By the way, Fox did not cover it. I listened on CNN to the entire broadcast, the survivors, the attorneys. And then I heard Donald Trump speaking clearly and precisely, calling it a Democrat hoax. And I want everyone to understand something. I have severe disagreements with Donald Trump on a whole host of issues. But when a statement like that is made by the President of the United States from the Oval Office, it's enough. Donald Trump should be gone. He should not be allowed to desecrate the White House. And I really believe that with all my heart and soul. And when Judge Breyer yesterday gave his opinion describing Trump as trying to create a national police force, and when I know now that there are litmus tests of loyalty attached to every level of what Donald Trump does, it makes Richard Nixon look like a saint. And so I want everybody to understand, if this were a Democrat speaking from the White House, a Democratic president, the Republicans would be calling all hell down on that White House. The deafening silence from the Republican Party relative to Donald Trump is a national shame. Actually, let me correct myself. It is a Republican shame. I hope that all the documents are released. Mark, I listened for an hour and a half, whatever it was, on CNN before I had a gig this morning. And I must tell you, I was in tears. I ran a program, Mark. I was in charge of all of secondary Jewish education in Los Angeles. And I ran 3 weekend units, 100 kids each, so over 300 kids, plus junior counselors. They were 14, 15, 16, and I had an ironclad rule that if any counselor laid a hand on a student, they were gone. And I would have called the families of those kids in order to try to explain the errors that were made in hiring such a staff person. The fact that Donald Trump is still defending Epstein, still saying he was a pretty good guy, the fact that there is still this kind of cloud hanging over the White House, it ought to be removed immediately. One other quick point. I'm told now that J.D. Vance is going to get involved. That J.D. Vance is going to be in charge of containing the damage, so to speak. And I think it is a terrible decision by the President of the United States to implicate the man who could well be his successor in this scandal. The idea of a cover-up is clear, and we need to be aware and directly confront the fact that we have the most corrupt president and administration in American history. It makes the Harding scandals or the Grant scandals fade by comparison. And when you have an order given by a president that says that even hiring people for NOAA, for the weather, that they have to pass a loyalty test on his general policies, believe me, I am beyond words upset. And I want to compliment you, Mark, on your monologue this morning, which I think explained the Epstein case beautifully. And so that's my reaction. I think this is a colossal problem for America, and I don't think it's going to go away. And for Donald Trump to call it a Democrat hoax is the most absurd thing that any American president could ever say.
You know, it's interesting. While the victims were speaking, there was a flyover in Washington. There was a flyover.
They had to pause. They had to pause.
And so you can take that two ways. One is, oh, they just had to pause. It was a coincidence. There was a flyover. The White House is saying it was because of the Polish leader
President.
who's there meeting with Trump, which is an odd thing. I mean, is there a flyover every time there's a world leader meeting with Trump? It seems to be now there is. But the timing, I would say, looks deliberate. You know, you could, and I think that you can make a pretty good case for the fact that there are a lot of assertions of brute force here. This is what these victims have dealt with all their lives. They've dealt with very powerful men, moneyed aristocracy, as they go into these homes and these domiciles around the world and this island, et cetera. There are pictures of all of these, leaders, heads of state, powerful people, famous people.
Including Bill Clinton.
Yes. And there's a thought, it's an implicit thought, which is, if I step out and I complain about this, if I go to anyone about this, who do I go to? I mean, the most powerful people in the world are part of this cabal. And you don't have to think it through in any kind of serious 3D chess to know you could really be threatened here. I mean,
you know what I learned this morning?
So last point. So I find the flyover kind of in that category of intimidation.
Yeah.
So
let me tell you, I found out this morning that Epstein had a picture of Donald Trump on his desk. We know they were close friends. We know that Donald Trump has made comments that frankly are less than agreeable when it comes to women. I don't understand why there is a reluctance by the American people to demand real answers from Donald J. Trump. And when I heard him this morning in his press conference at in the Oval Office, dismissing all the Epstein stuff as a hoax and saying there were far more important things, he's had the most successful presidency so far in American history in the opening days, it's nonsense, pure nonsense. And I guess my frustration now is, and you pointed it out, that we have an Attorney General of the United States who is giving Donald Trump license. And this is wrong. So my answer to you is, as committed as I am to opposing most of Donald Trump's policies, his conduct in relation to the Epstein case, his words today should be an impeachable offense. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. And I hope that when the midterm elections take place, the American people respond by electing Democrats, or at least, if they're going to vote for Republicans who will vote on this resolution affirmatively. We will see. The White House is now threatening retribution against Republicans who vote for this resolution. If that is in fact true in terms of their conduct, let me assure you, in my judgment, Donald Trump should be disqualified and his administration should be damned by history for these kinds of actions. And by the way, if you think I'm being extreme, Mark, as I say, I ran a program for 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, that age group. We were so protective of the girls, and that's what they were, young women, but girls. And all I can tell you is the absurd comments by Donald Trump are just so disqualifying to me on every single level. I find them offensive, and I'm going to be very interested today. I had to go up to the university because I'm teaching there, and I had to take a brief break. In fact, I left what was supposed to be another session to be with you today. I want to know how the reaction will unfold during this day. I want to know what Speaker Johnson will say. I want to know how that vote is going to go. I'm waiting for members of the United States Senate to chime in on this. But most important of all, I will be watching the White House and the comments that they continue to make. And by the White House, I mean the President of the United States, which are obscene. And if I were on KGO with you right now, and somebody asked me, would you make a statement like that on the public airwaves? The answer is I would, gladly. And I believe it to be true.
I want to pivot from Epstein to the discussion of moving troops into American cities. I, by the way, don't view any of these things and statements about moving troops into American cities as distinct completely from Epstein, because I believe that Donald Trump wants to try to outrun this story, distract, or in other ways kill the clock on it. He did it for August. He had a good August because Congress wasn't in session. But as we noted on this show, Congress is back, and when Congress gets back, Epstein is going to float to the top again, and that's where we are. But what about putting American troops in American cities? Now,
did you read Charles Breyer's decision on this yesterday? Judge Breyer made a clear statement that it is clear from the evidence that Donald Trump is trying to create a national police force under his direction. And I must tell you, I've known Charles Breyer over many years. I've known his family. And I must tell you, I have never been prouder of a statement made by a judge than I was the statement made in his decision yesterday by Charles Breyer.
So give us a sense of what that decision, in essence, is saying.
That
because
you can't send
because
troops.
It sets the table for future decisions in relation to Trump's
Not necessarily.
moves.
And the reason is because Donald Trump's people are immediately moving to overturn what Charles Breyer said. If it's overturned, it's over. But the implication is clear. Donald Trump is exceeding his authority as president of the United States. And that is a statement now made by Judge Breyer clearly. Donald Trump's people will move immediately to have it overturned. Now, let me ask all of our listeners a question. Do you have faith in the courts? And this, to me, is something of paramount importance. On the first Monday in October, the Supreme Court will reconvene. Many of the cases that are coming before the Supreme Court are cases involving excessive use of power, the attempt at use of power by Donald Trump. The test is not only what the Congress does in the next few weeks, it is what the court will do. And may I say that I hope that Judge Breyer's view is upheld. And if I were nominating somebody today for the John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage Award, it would be Judge Charles Breyer. He deserves it. And let me tell you, it's not easy when you make a judgment like that. But 3 cheers for Judge Breyer, who I would hasten to point out was on the Watergate prosecution staff. He's had a long and distinguished history and knows the ins and outs of Washington. His brother, of course, is Stephen Breyer, the retired Justice of the United States Supreme Court.
It's you talk about the courts, and it's kind of on full display, John, that we can't really count on the courts in some ways, and yet oftentimes the courts do turn back the Trump agenda. We've seen it with the deportations. You know, the problem is that these court cases linger, these court judgments are appealed, and just as we're seeing with the tariffs, for example, tariffs are ruled. We knew that they were illegal. We knew it. We talked about it on this show.
We sure did.
You can't just declare an emergency and start seizing power to.
We talked about Smoot-Hawley. We talked about the Smoot-Hawley bill in 1930. And some of you will recall that when we were on KGO, we did a lot of discussion about the implications. The fact that the Republicans in Congress have abdicated the responsibility assigned to them to be the ones to handle tariffs is a shame the Republican Party should carry with it for generations to come.
So my point simply is that these tariffs are continuing to be imposed. These are import taxes that were imposed by the chief executive, again, in a violation of law. And the violation of law was called out by the court, but because it's on appeal, these import taxes continue to be imposed. So just as an aside, if the Supreme Court rules, his concierge Supreme Court, Trump is counting on ruling with him, with his instincts and impulse to impose these tariffs in this chaotic, bizarre way. But if the Supreme Court rules against him, he will have to unwind these tariffs, and there are going to be hugely expensive, complex, essentially clawing back. There's going to be an expensive clawing back of all that money. There'll be lawsuits from it. You know, John, people have lost businesses as a result of this. Small business has gone under in many cases because of these tariffs.
You're right. But don't confuse Donald Trump and his administration with the facts. They are determined to move forward on this catastrophic course. And all I can tell you is that the Republicans in Congress are as responsible for this as is Donald Trump. They have not exercised legitimate congressional authority over tariffs.
100%, you're right about that. I mean, that was the problem. They didn't offer any impediment in the least to Donald Trump's worst instincts. And then when they saw the tariffs, I mean, my God, how could you possibly be okay with it? I mean, 46% tariffs on stuff coming out of Vietnam. They were just these ridiculously, there's a 50% tariff on Brazil because I'm angry about the way you're treating Bolsonaro, a 50% tariff on India, driving India closer to China.
Look what happened. India was standing directly with China, Russia, and North Korea in this alliance, which formalized yesterday on the celebration by the Chinese of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. We talked
about it on the show. Ben and I said that this is only going to drive India closer to China. There you go. They're all standing there looking at this from the review stand.
Do you understand,
watching this military parade?
Do you understand how dangerous this is? Do the American people understand how dangerous this is? I am telling you, the danger is real. Red lights should be flashing. And our political system is now being tested as to how we will respond. That includes the courts.
This is interesting to me. And let's stop talking in generalities. When you say, "Do you understand how dangerous this is?" Put some specifics on it, because I think there are specifics that are alarming.
Number one, if the president of the United States has the power to put American federal troops into cities around America, it is a threat to American democracy, including the potential ramifications for future elections. Number two, Donald Trump has issued an executive order. There are two parts to it. One, that you need a voter ID in order to vote. And number two, to ban, listen to me carefully, to ban early voting. This is a direct threat to American democracy. It received hardly any attention, but it deserves to be underlined. In international affairs, we have now created a situation where we have an alliance of nations. You remember George Bush's axis of evil? This is an axis of evil, and it creates major problems. A military parade, and let me remind you, Donald Trump just had a military parade in Washington, D.C., the same sort of thing which these authoritarian dictators applaud so rapidly and so continually. Look, Mark.
What about this from Myra? They're going to go after Taiwan next. They're talking about China, while Donald is busy with the Epstein stuff.
It's not impossible. I think the Chinese are looking very carefully. They're building alliances. They are making major economic moves around the world. And there is no doubt that China sees itself as the future. And make no mistake, the people on Taiwan know it. They've held military exercises. What should they do if the Chinese were to invade? And we know the Chinese forces are being prepared for just that purpose. And what would the United States do? I mean, really and truly, we can give the Taiwanese what they need militarily, but they are not equipped to stand against the Chinese army.
Well, let's just talk about the economics of the Taiwan situation for a moment, because
disaster.
And I think the biggest chip maker in the
correct.
world is right there in Taiwan.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just a territory, a piece of real estate. There's something significant there. I want to pivot to Gaza and what's happening there. There's hundreds of thousands of people protesting in Israel against Israeli policy toward Gaza and what's happening there. Can you try to sort that out for us a little bit? You know so much about that region.
Well, first of all, I want you to know that a group of historians declared what's happening in Gaza a genocide. But if you dig deeper, you find out there was never a discussion about it. Most of the people who were eligible to vote did not vote because they didn't know that the vote was taking place. The simple fact is, in Israel, there are two movements. One against Netanyahu.
Let me just stop for a second. The people who were eligible to vote on whether or not it was a genocide? What do you mean?
That's correct. There's a group who are genocide scholars.
Okay.
Just Google it. It's right there.
Okay.
They did not give enough notice. There was no thorough discussion about it. And
so you're saying the declaration of it as a genocide, you're saying was not done legitimately?
Of course.
Okay.
And it's very clear. I mean, if you know where to look, it's all over the media, and there's no denial on the part of this particular group of people. They wanted a declaration, and they got it. Had there been a thorough debate, they might have gotten it as well. But that's not the way they operated. And as you know, this is a serious question. In Israel, there are two forces at work. One, the people who just want Netanyahu out. And that is, I believe, at least half the country. The other group is concerned about the hostages. They want the remaining hostages and the bodies of the remaining hostages released. The one thing I can tell you about Israel, whatever you like or dislike in their policy, every aspect of this is debated publicly in the Israeli press. There is no censorship. There is no walking away from it. Netanyahu today is not particularly popular on that level, but to his everlasting credit, I guess, in history, how he handled the Houthis. They just wiped out the whole leadership of the Houthis. How he handled Hezbollah, completely destroying Hezbollah. His response to Hamas. From Israel's point of view, you've got to separate the policies that are being expressed and the protests that are happening from the simple fact that from Israel's point of view, the Netanyahu policy has made them safer militarily. And I want everybody to understand that. The rockets are no longer raining down. And may I say, to Donald Trump's credit, whatever his motivation, he latched on to what was happening. And although he did not destroy the nuclear capability of Iran, he did set it back with great damage.
But they're a pariah state, John. I mean, quickly, Israel's becoming a pariah state because of what's going on in Gaza.
I hate to tell you this, but Israel's been a pariah state for years.
Okay, that I think that's the default position. Is like, hey, we're already a pariah state.
That's exactly
the world is
position.
ganging up on us, so we have to take care of number one.
The feeling is that no matter what Israel does, they gave back Gaza back in 2005 to the Palestinians, and there were many, including myself, who supported Sharon's decision, with a caveat that the Palestinians then had to prove their willingness to get along. You still have not had a declaration from Hamas saying that they support a peace process. A ceasefire does not bring peace. And indeed, Hamas says they're preparing for another operation. So it's a big question. By the way, the Israelis are not blameless in all of this. There is no happiness about what's happening in Gaza in Israel.
Well, we're out of time here, but I want to. But what is happening? I mean, isn't it a genocide? Aren't there genocidal aspects to what's going on in Gaza?
No, a genocide is when you say we are taking this group of people and we are going to exterminate them, as the Germans did to the Jews and the Gypsies and homosexuals during the Second World War.
You're saying when you identify an ethnicity or a cultural lifestyle, then
and you say you're going to wipe it off the map.
Okay.
Let me promise you one thing. If Israel wanted to destroy the Palestinians, they could have done it easily. They have the weaponry to do it. They have the manpower to do it. But I must tell you, the Israeli army is driven by ethics, and Israel is driven by ethics. And although in a war, ethics may be stretched, let me be crystal clear. If you ask Hamas, they are saying, we will destroy Israel. They're out to kill Jews around the world. All you have to do is go to a synagogue in Melbourne, Australia, to see the mass destruction there. But I must tell you, no one is happy with this situation. And as you may know, may I be critical now of Donald Trump and the administration. Mahmoud Abbas, who is 86 years old and is not particularly effective as the leader of the Palestinian Authority, has been banned from coming to the United Nations. What a mistake. I would want the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, at the UN in order to let them stand and condemn Hamas. Let them stand and say, let the hostages go. One of the problems is with the Palestinians is there's no interlocker. There's no willingness on the part of Palestinian leadership to make those kinds of statements. And that, may I tell you, is the paradox for the Israelis. With whom do they make a deal?
Yeah,
With
there
whom do they make
isn't a
peace?
political leadership that they can really latch on to.
No, of
That's
course
probably one of the huge issues that the Palestinians have had historically. There have been competing political factions. Hamas really, was voted in as the political superstructure of Gaza for so long. I got to wrap up. This is a definite to be
Are you
continued.
telling me that you are going to wrap this up and that my time is up?
I am telling you,
Can you let him finish, sir?
No, I cannot let him finish. I've got to move along.
He's got to move along, and ladies and gentlemen, I will be listening as
Thank you.
he moves on. May I urge, in closing, support for the Mark Thompson program. Mark does a great job. Kim does an outstanding job, and they deserve our support. And may I say, Mark, I am delighted to be among those who tells people to listen to your podcast.
I appreciate your frankness. Thank you for the love at the end here. And you can find John, of course, with a daily podcast of his own called Around the Political World with John Rothman. Welcome back, sir. Great seeing you. Bye-bye, John Rothman.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
I did a podcast yesterday. I was a guest on a podcast, and he put it up to there, and he sent me the link, and I went to it, and our drop, Where Are My Weed Smokers At? We run it. We're the only the drop. I grabbed it years ago, so I know it doesn't exist anywhere else. And he put up in the title, Where Are My Weed Smokers At? I'm thinking people are going to go through and think we're talking about weed or something. It's just a drop on our.
Where are my weed smokers
it's
at?
just a drop on our show, But it was with Patrick Lovell. I don't know what is his show called. It's Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con, it's called. Truth Bombs the Con. He says the incomparable Mark Thompson, where are all my weed smokers at? I'm thinking, I don't know if that's a great association for me.
People are going to tune in thinking it's all about the pot.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not about the pot. All right. Smash the like button for everything we're doing, and we're on to
the Mark Thompson Show.
What a treat. We missed him yesterday. Excuse me, I've had this cold. Excuse me. What a treat. We missed him yesterday. He is back today on a Wednesday, normally a Tuesday visitor. He's the best-selling author, the Pulitzer Prize winner. He's the co-founder of DCReport.org, which you should check out regularly. And, of course, he's a professor now at Rochester Institute of Technology. He's the brilliant David Cay Johnston.
Well, hello, Mark.
Hello, sir. So good to have you on board. Wow, I was looking at the Epstein presser today, so many of the victims speaking on Capitol Hill, and I was thinking of you because you have made the point repeatedly that this story is one that you felt, I was using the phraseology that Trump can't outrun it. You've used different phraseology, but made essentially the same point. And the return of Congress has brought the return of this story, David Cay Johnston.
Yeah, and it's very good to see that a number of the young women are in the position of saying, excuse me, we're the victims. Why are you not talking to us? And we want this out there. I listened to one this morning who was a guest on NPR. I did not think she was particularly carefully thought through in her answers, but she said, this all happened to us. That's not the issue about keeping us out of the public record. And it's not their names that we care about. It's Donald Trump and the other people around him. And whoever they are, I don't think it matters. I think that the issue is we need to know who these people were, but we need to know in the case of Donald Trump, because we cannot as a country be led by a serial child rapist.
The bobbing and weaving that he has found others to do, right? Pam Bondi, who demanded the release of these files, and now she says there are no files there. Oh, well, it turns out there's nothing really new in the files.
Well, nothing new in the files they released.
Yeah, which is true. And then, of course, Patel and Bongino, who've also, they've demanded historically through podcasts and all the rest, transparency. Now they're in power, and they don't make those demands. They say there's no there as well. So, but the bobbing and weaving now has been joined by J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is sort of, I think, Donald Trump's real henchman. He's going to go out there and, clean things up. And they have, in essence, the White House issued a statement saying if you back this bill to release the Epstein files, you back this congressional action, we'll consider it a hostile act. Those were the words used by the White House. So it's more than just bobbing and weaving.
It's an astonishing thing that these are records of no consequence with nothing there. But if you want to make them public, we will destroy you. Exactly. It would require, to use Sam Elliott's phrase, the actor Sam Elliott, a special kind of stupid not to get the fundamental message there. There has to be material in there that will destroy Donald Trump, or they wouldn't care. They simply wouldn't care. And I'm sure there are some other people, depending on what they release and how, that this will matter to. Behind all of this, what we're seeing is, for decades, the Republican Party ran on what they said were a set of principles. Lower taxes for everybody, less regulation of business, less government interference in the economy, and transparency. Run the government like a business, and freedom. Liberty, freedom, all the time. And we're seeing that was just all nonsense. What we're seeing happen here is a government completely antithetical to those views. And I'm sure you wouldn't have trouble getting Republicans on who will say that. I was on Middle East TV today with a Trump supporter who said, yeah, I like these various things he's doing, but you can't argue that these other ones. Intel having give 10% of its equity over to the government. If you're an Intel shareholder, sounds like a good time to get lawyers. Telling a company you have to give us 15% of your revenue if you want to sell a particular kind of microchip to China. That has nothing to do with national security. If the issue is the government getting paid, we have rules that allow the government to control exports of anything considered a munition. And way back in time when Apple started making computers, and they made little Apple IIe computers. I owned one for me and one for my children at the time. The US government banned those from several countries as munitions because they could be used to calculate trajectories for artillery. So the government has plenty of power to do these things. What you're seeing is a crazy madman doing whatever the hell he wants. And as he said in the first term, I have an Article 2 of our Constitution that says I can do anything I want. Doesn't say anything like that, Mark, but he acts like it. And where are the Republicans who will stand up to him?
Well, it's government by intimidation on your last point. And I'm glad you mentioned Intel. Excuse me, clear my throat. Because the Intel thing was also a shakedown. It felt like a shakedown to me, right? He identifies the CEO of Intel as, this despicable guy. He's incompetent. He shouldn't be running and then he meets with him, decides that, we're going to get our beak wet to the point that it'll be a 10%. And that, as you say, there wasn't any kind of, if it's a legit security concern, then it's not a question of, being bought in for 10%. He gets bought in for 10%. He pivots to, this is the greatest guy. I think I've changed my mind on him. He's really terrific. It's so clunky, David. It's classic Trump. You've documented this, it goes back decades. It's all right there.
Look, you can like or dislike Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, but all of them have an identified set of principles. The only principles Donald ever identifies are me, 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 me. I'm the one who's been harmed. I'm the one who's been wronged. I alone can save you. I alone care about you. everything is about him, and it's indicative of his very deep mental illness, and it's very, very troubling that people are not willing to stand up to him. And it's not like if you stand up, you're going to get shot, at least not at this stage of his effort to overthrow our government. But
you'll be assassinated
what's the worst
politically.
thing you risk? You
right?
won't. You'll be Jody Ernst. You're not going to be electable again.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly it. They'll take you down politically. At least that's the implied threat. And in this case, like today, it's the explicit threat. You know, you're in reference to the Epstein stuff. You talk about his mental health. I want to talk about his physical health for a moment. He does seem labored in moments when he's speaking. He's certainly way off, any kind of coherence at times. Speak to his situation with regard to that stuff.
Well, a number of people, and I talked to Dr. Bandy Lee about this not too long ago, a number of people who deal with older Americans say that Donald is showing signs of cognitive decline. And Alzheimer's, which people think of right away, is just a kind of dementia. There are lots of different things that happen in your brain. Now, not being able to remember a word, if you're my age, and I'm almost as old as Donald, that happens. It can happen to you in your 20s. But Donald can't stick with a theme for any period of time, and he goes off on answers that have nothing to do with the question asked. Now, you're putting up there right now a picture of his the back of his hand with a large bruise on it. That is very often indicative that he's getting some kind of injection through a needle that's put in his arm and is there maybe all night long while he's sleeping. And he's put makeup on it to cover up. The swollen ankles can be signs of a number of things, including congestive heart failure, and that the veins that are supposed to return the blood from the arteries back up to the heart are slipping, and you're getting a buildup there. You'll also notice, if you watch Donald at least as carefully as I do and study a lot of the footage, Donald has big emotional swings. So there are days when he, at least in the past, would walk smartly somewhere. And there are other days when he walked like someone who is deeply depressed and is sort of forcing himself to move along. And when he's in that mood, you can see it in his answers and his commentaries, where he's just, why am I here? Disconnected. So, I mean, Donald is not physically or mentally well and hasn't been for a long, long time. But no Washington press corps does not, as a general rule, talk about that unless there's something like the ability to get the images of his ankles, which he now hides by how he sits and where he sits. It's just sort of off limits, in the same way that when FDR had a mistress in the White House, when Eisenhower had a mistress, when a whole group of other presidents, not Ronald Reagan not Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, or Richard Nixon, but a bunch of others, Democrats and Republicans, George H.W. Bush had a mistress at the State Department. It wasn't reported on. It was considered outside the reasonable limits of what to report on. President's health has been on the agenda since 1980, when the New York Times sent Dr. Lawrence Altman, a physician who was a reporter at the New York Times and a friend of mine, to go and inquire about Ronald Reagan's health. And we should know about his health. And if you're foolish enough to think that Donald weighs 235 pounds, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn.
Yeah, well, any of the official pronouncements as to his health, that you can pretty much, just put those in the circular file. Yeah. But it's interesting that, those who want to build their own narrative put together little bits and pieces of Donald Trump's, the bruising, him being off camera for 6 days, and before you know it, they are talking about the fact he hasn't been playing golf, that he's deceased. I mean, we go from, zero to deceased pretty quickly. I think there's a lot of sort of wishing for this guy? You said it before. You don't want him offed at all. You don't want him to pass away.
Right.
You just want him out of public policy. Yeah.
But Donald has disappeared in the past. When he was running against Hillary Clinton, and she exhausted herself to the point where we saw her. She was sick. She should have taken a day off. She collapsed getting into a van, and Donald made a big deal out of that. Everybody forgets Donald disappeared several times during the campaign. And he might call up Fox News and talk to people on their morning show, but that was it. We didn't see him. And that's how Donald's been as long as I've known him, which is since 1988. He has these mood swings, and a lot of people have them. Doesn't mean that, that by itself doesn't mean that you have a mental illness, but there are lots of people who, instead of having a steady keel, they have ups and downs.
Let's just move, David, to what he's talking about openly, and that is moving troops into American cities. On one level, I see it as, and I see, I guess, everything that's a public pronouncement as adjacent to the distraction model that he has to keep going for Epstein. And it does seize the news cycle. I mean, it's effective that way. But now it will coexist in the news cycle with Epstein. But that said, now he's getting pushback from like J.B. Pritzker, who's really pretty good on this. Albert, do you have the Pritzker stuff? I wanted to play it for David. But as he gets pushback from Chicago, which is Pritzker's state, right, Illinois, he's now saying maybe I'll take the troops to New Orleans. I mean, it's a weird kind of road testing he's doing. Here's a little of Pritzker, though. I was impressed by the way he pushed back.
Reliable agents in unmarked vehicles with masks are planning to raid Latino communities and say they're targeting violent criminals. As we saw in Los Angeles, a very, very small percentage of the individuals they will target will be violent criminals. Instead, you're likely to see videos of them hauling away mothers and fathers, traveling to work or picking up their kids from school. Sometimes they will detain, handcuff, and haul away children. They are law-abiding individuals who pay taxes and contribute to the communities, who feel safe going to work and attending mandatory immigration check-ins. In other words, they're following the law. We have reason to believe that Stephen Miller chose the month of September to come to Chicago because of celebrations around Mexican Independence Day that happen here every year. It breaks my heart to report that we have been told ICE will try and disrupt community picnics and peaceful parades. Let's be clear, the terror and cruelty is the point, not the safety of anyone living here. Third, as lawful citizens exercise their First Amendment rights, Trump and his team will be looking for any excuse to put active duty military on our streets, supposedly to protect ICE. We have reason to believe that the Trump administration has already begun staging the Texas National Guard for deployment in Illinois. I want to be very clear on this point, and I want to speak directly to the press right now. We know before anything has happened here that the Trump plan is to use any excuse to deploy armed military personnel to Chicago. If someone flings a sandwich at an ICE agent, Trump will try and go on TV and declare an emergency in Chicago. I'm imploring everyone, if and when that happens, do not take the bait.
So that's J.B. Pritzker in Chicago. Thank you, Albert, for that. I was impressed by that. I thought he spoke plainly about the threat.
Well, Pritzker, who's part of a very large, wealthy, and highly educated family, I think has been resolute all the way along, has not cowered in any way whatsoever, and he's not going to. And let me point out two, I think, significant things here. I only lived in Chicago for 6 months of my life, so I don't know that much about it. But Los Angeles, where I lived for 10 years, and in California for 36, when I was investigating the LAPD for the LA Times in 1980 to the beginning of 83, there were 1,000 murders a year in LA and 3 million people. LA now has 4 million people. It's one of the few big cities that's really grown in the last 30, 40 years. So it's gone from 3 million to 4 million, and the number of homicides has gone from 1,000 a year to 300. I'm sorry, where is the crime problem here? And most of the murders, by the way, are between hostile intimates, where it has nothing to do with law enforcement. You kill your lover, your spouse, your business partner. Those killings, law enforcement has little to no ability to do anything about it. And in fact, here at RIT, the Criminal Justice School issues reports about this stuff. I teach a course in criminal justice here. So Pritzker is exactly right. This is not what Donald is doing. Now, the other thing is he's sending troops from Texas to Illinois. Why is he doing that? Well, just think back to Tiananmen Square. When the students demonstrated against the communist regime, against the thugs who run Beijing, in 19 whatever year it was, 80 something, they sent troops who were from the Beijing Federal District area, and they would not shoot the people who they knew, or they knew there'd be family members or people they knew. So they replaced them with troops that were brought in from the north of China. And that's what Trump is doing here. You get people who are from a distant place, they don't have any sense of this, and then you go after their morality. And let me point out, anybody who follows illegal orders better be prepared, because if we get through this and we get our democracy back in full, you may well end up, if you're in the National Guard, you may well end up with a long sentence in a military prison for what you did, especially if you're an officer.
Yeah, when the shoe drops, it may drop hard. Yeah. It's interesting. That's a really great point that you're making about the connection that people from the same community or the same state feel. So that National Guard coming in from Texas to Illinois, they don't have that connection. Right. And so they're far more free, in a sense, psychologically, to break the kind of oath that they would otherwise maintain.
And it's not like this is cost-free, by the way. You're in the National Guard, a weekend warrior, as we say, and suddenly you're deployed for 2 months in Los Angeles or Chicago or somewhere else. That means you're not earning your salary at your position. The business that you work for, whether you're a doctor with a medical office or you're putting parts together for some piece of machinery, isn't getting your work. There's an enormous social cost and economic cost to these actions, which are just plain flat out illegal. And today I was on another show with someone overseas who said, well, he's only the 9th president who's done this, and rattled off presidents who said they've sent the National Guard to deal with riots. And I went, yeah, where's the riot in Los Angeles? At the peak of the demonstrations against ICE, I calculated that it was 0.000037% of the city of LA that was involved geographically in the demonstrations. And there was no property damage of any significance. And I'm sorry, throwing a deli sandwich at someone is not a riot.
Yeah,
and you keep hearing, by the way, Trump people saying, well, they burned Los Angeles down in the early 90s. No, it was certain neighborhoods in South Central LA. It was far from, it was a tiny fraction of the city. That isn't justifying riots and illegal conduct. It's just, let's remember proportionality.
Well, you're right. In the 90s, during the Rodney King riots, the riots following that judgment and the court case, there was a real sense that LA was teetering, and you needed the National Guard, and actually the National Guard was and invoking the National Guard and the power of the National Guard was completely sanctioned by mayor, governor, et cetera. That's a totally different process.
Yeah, and here now they're opposed by these mayors and governors saying, we don't want this to happen.
Thank you.
But, the goal here is intimidation and total power. They're not there yet. Donald is consolidating power. He continues to go through and get rid of various people, some of whom are going to be reinstated by the courts. He's working to make those commissions that are required by law to be some Democrats and some Republicans. Majority party gets the majority of the seats. He's removing Democrats so they can't function. And that's another part. If you can't overcome the government and turn it into your personal tool, just make it unable to function.
Sure. And that's on the regulatory side. I mean, he's taking all the cops off the beat, so that should tell you right there what's happening. Everything from the financial markets to law enforcement. And it's interesting, David, as I've got a question for you that I don't want to this is from Depressed Canadian, who, thank you for the $50 super chat. What does David Cay Johnston do to combat a general sense of nihilism or deep cynicism? It just seems like constant cover-ups out in the open. Can you speak to that?
Well, there are constant cover-ups out in the open. Donald tells us, I'm going to commit this crime. He just doesn't call it a crime, and he's very open about it because he feels he cannot be vanquished. And the cynicism is a real problem. Cynicism only helps the oppressors. You know, you need to be optimistic. You need to think we're going to defeat this. We're going to regain in full our democracy. And by the way, if we succeed in this and we get Trump and his ilk out of there, that's not the end. That's the beginning of building a new and better society. By the way, one fortunate thing is that in every court except the U.S. Supreme Court, Donald is generally losing. He's lost essentially 96% of the cases. The posse comitatus law was cited just, I guess, yesterday or this morning by the federal judge who said, yeah, this deployment of troops to Los Angeles was illegal. You can't do that. And you've got two grounds here. Donald is trying to use the 1798 Alien Sedition Acts, which are paranoid. First mentally ill president, John Adams, great patriot, but was paranoid, got passed, and all but one section of that law was thrown out in order to justify what you can do under the 1798 law. You have to have an invasion. Trump says we're being invaded from the south, and in the other moment he says, you know, we had the lowest number of illegal crossings of this country in the history, and certainly in modern history since we started keeping data about it. So he doesn't care about the law. That's just a pretext. That's just a cover. And it's why he has the corrupt Pam Bondi, the corrupt Kash Patel, and the utterly incompetent and unqualified Don Magnino as deputy at the FBI. Because these are people who, they'll do whatever he tells them to do. And if we get through this, hopefully those people are going to be prosecuted and they're going to go to prison.
So you'd say to Depressed Canadian and those of us who, you know, are downcast about the fact that he's been able to populate the government with all of these loyalists and been able to sort of shine on any kind of legal judgments and do what he wants and, you know, pursue these chaotic and ridiculous self-serving policies. You'd say we can try after all of this. First of all, you'd say, I think you'd point to the courts is what I'm getting from you.
Right.
Except we'll find out what the Supreme Court says about tariffs and the rest. And then you'd say that this will pass. This too, his takeover is not complete. It may seem complete, but it's not complete.
He's far from complete. I mean, he's acting as a dictator. There's no question, but he is far from having complete control. And we can still stop him. But if people become cynical, if they go, oh, no, I'm too busy, I need to watch my baseball game or my football game, then we're not going to get there. And it's important to call upon leaders. I mean, where are the pastors, rabbis, and imams saying this is wrong and this is immoral? I'm sure there are some doing that, but you don't see that as part of a big movement. The labor leaders, shrunken as labor is, need to be standing up and saying this is wrong. Anybody who's a moral philosopher, and we got a whole world full of them here, they should be standing up and saying this is wrong. And people who believe Donald Trump is their special savior, particularly if they call themselves Christians, really need to be called to account, because what Donald Trump is doing is violently, disgustingly anti-Christian. I mean, if you're really a Christian, your obligation is to care for the stranger, to take in the stranger, to make sure that they're clothed and fed. I just taught my law class last night about the history of debt. And we went into Leviticus, where if a poor person has borrowed money from you and their security is their cloak. Remember, Israel is a desert society. So like Las Vegas, it's 120 degrees. The sun goes down. Now it's 60 degrees or 40 degrees. you had to give the person back their cloak, even if they hadn't paid off their debt to you until sunrise, because otherwise they would freeze to death or they might well die from being too cold. We have moral rules for a reason, because human experience has taught us that we need to treat other people in a decent way. Stephen Miller, I mean, when he was in high school at Santa Monica High, he had to be taken off the stage because he went into this horrible racist rant. And he's been that way his whole life. His family has said something's wrong with him, but he's got Donald Trump's ear like nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, this configuration, as it is right now, leaves Miller in charge of a lot. And it looks like September is going to be a big surge for his ICE crew. They're paying those $50,000 incentive signing bonuses to those who leave other law enforcement agencies and join ICE. They've lowered the threshold, as you know, physically, the weight requirements, the education requirements, everything. Just want to get more people involved in ICE. And so you have these glorified nightclub bouncers taking some guy out of a car wash and throwing him down to the ground like he's a drug kingpin. It's disgusting. It's grotesque to me.
Well, and remember, in his first term, Donald said to police on Long Island, you know, I don't know why you're always putting your hand on the guy's head so he doesn't hit the door frame. You know, you should rough him up some. That was a clear declaration that I am not in favor of the rule of law. After all, people who are arrested are suspects. They're not convicted. Do most suspects get convicted? Sure, but that's not the point. As Blackstone taught us in 1766, and his words are still taught to every lawyer and judge in the country, you know, you have to respect the rule of law first and foremost, and the principle that better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man be wrongly convicted still stands. And the reason for that is very simple. If you just arrest people left and right, like gang members I talked to in LA back in the early 80s, who were like, yeah, well, why not go commit crimes? The LAPD is going to just arrest you anyway, and they're going to put you in prison whether you did anything wrong or not. So why not? That's not the attitude you want to have. We have to have very deep respect for innocence. Trump doesn't have that. Look at how he talks about other people when, of course, in all of that, he's projecting his own criminal conduct.
No, the projection is insane. All right, I'm out of time, but I'm going to quickly push you for one more minute and ask about the Supreme Court and the consideration of the tariffs. To me, it seems like a huge case looming. Should they rule and affirm the notion that the tariffs are illegal, I mean, imposed in an illegal way by this president, then there's going to be a gaggle of court cases to get that money back. I mean, businesses have gone under, David, because of the withering nature of these tariffs, and those businesses are going to want to recover damages as a result of that. Can you just game that out?
Yes,
quickly,
I mean,
please?
if you claim that you are an originalist or textualist, or you read the Constitution in its original setting, this is a no-brainer. Donald Trump has no authority to do this. The reason that we live in the Second American Republic under the Constitution was that the first American Republic, the Articles of Confederation, had no power to tax and no power to regulate business. That's the reason we have our Constitution, is to tax ourselves. We don't teach in our schools, but that's the reality of it. And Article 1, the legislative provision, Section 8, the powers we grant to Congress, Clause 1, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, that's what a tariff is, a duty, and imposts. And except for this very limited area that's never really been used in emergencies, because it takes Congress a while to meet, just even if you need them right away, it takes a day or two to assemble them in Washington. The president has no power to impose tariffs. And the specialized court that hears tariff cases, in its opinion, laid out a primer for anybody who doesn't understand how this works to know that president has no such authority. The reason a number of governments around the world are saying, oh yeah, we made a deal with you, and then you see nothing's happened, nothing's signed, is that, they know perfectly well Trump has no power to do this. And if the Supreme Court finds some way to pretzel the law, to pretzel the Constitution, you should really be worried that that is the end of the American experiment, because once they do that, they've signaled Trump, just keep going, pal. Just keep gaining dictatorial powers. Dictators can impose taxes and tariffs, and they can say, well, we're going to tax you, Mark Thompson, but not your friend who has a podcast and lives in the house next door who we like.
Right.
And so it's absolutely crucial. And I cannot imagine Gorsuch going along with this on Trump. I absolutely, however, believe that you will see Alito and Thomas do anything Donald wants. They'll find some way to, some exigent circumstances, this part of the Constitution isn't clear, some sort of nonsense.
Yeah.
So I think the important people in this are going to be the three liberals, Amy Coney Barrett, who has shown some thoughtfulness and independence, and then John Glover Roberts, who we thought was an institutionalist. It's not entirely clear anymore, and Gorsuch. And Kavanaugh, I don't know. But this is terribly important that the Supreme Court not just say these tariffs are illegal, unconstitutional, but that it says so strongly and definitively the president may not assert powers specifically given to Congress.
Yeah, this would be a huge brushback pitch here. They come in again, I believe, beginning of next month, right? October.
Supreme Court? Yes,
Yeah.
The first Tuesday after the 1st of October,
Right.
second Tuesday in October, basically.
David, thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate it. David
See
Cay
you next
Johnston,
week
everybody.
on the right day of the week.
Yeah, see you next Tuesday. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, everyone. Thank you to Vilma with a $4.99 super chat. I thought that using the military as a domestic police force is against the Constitution. This will be fought in court after the fact in most cases. Yes, sadly, it is after the fact. Hey, Peep, says Luis, don't forget to play Powerball. If I win, I will be sure to check in with the show's largest super chat from my new home in Lisbon or Ibiza. Yeah, you can't really argue with that plan. I like that. Yeah. I think the Powerball's up to, what is it, $1.5 billion? What is it, Albert? You follow the Powerball. It's, I want to say it's $1.5 billion, and I'm...
Albert, thank you.
I'm not quite sure.
That would be
Kim, you don't play the Powerball, do you?
1.4.
1.4, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about
Next
you?
drawing is in 7 hours. So in 7 hours, maybe one of us won't be on the show.
Oh.
What?
What is, I would say Albert plays Powerball, Kim does not. Am I right about that?
No.
Once it gets up there, I like to dip my hand in that jar, you know,
Sure.
but
You know,
'cause it's just exciting.
Do you dip your hand in the jar, Kim?
When it gets to this point, I'm definitely a hand dipper. Yep.
No, yeah.
it depends though. I think Kim has a threshold though, right? Kim,
I
is
do.
like 500 million. Is it enough?
Oh, that's right. We talked about this. Kim
Yeah,
is like really.
You start pushing 800 million, my
Yeah.
eyes start to open.
She's not really interested
Yeah.
under 800 million.
Yeah.
It's really wild. She's
You have to hover near a bill, and then
she's
I'm
kind
like,
of a lottery elitist. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my God.
I know. It's pretty exciting though.
yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
way,
I mean,
way
I
up
don't want
there.
to win like $1 million or $2 million. You can keep it. I want the big prize.
Yeah.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah. I always thought this was the place for understanding geopolitics, but with a cannabis twist. Puff, puff, pass, and live long. The Mark Thompson Show says Blue Liz 420.
Where are my weed smokers
And
at?
there you go. How about
Morning.
you? Blue Liz is having a good morning from wherever you are, Blue Liz. Taiwan is one of the few places where certain kinds of CPUs can be made. Yeah, and they have this very special chip. And that's why I was saying Taiwan, it's not just a piece of real estate. There's real economic impact to Taiwan, and its vulnerability is real. So smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Helps us in the YouTube universe. If you've liked any of the show, please wait for the breakouts. Albert will diligently put these videos out conversation with David Cay Johnston, for example, conversation we're about to have with Belinda Waymouth. We drop a lot of Belinda stuff on the weekend. And so if you want to see what's happening in the environment, the latest technologies that are being employed to restore various habitats, et cetera, we drop a lot of that stuff on the weekend with her. But in any case, please share those videos. The only other thing I would say is next week on Monday, there's an extraordinary conversation with a former Scientologist. He's just written a book, and this isn't your normal Scientology book. I've read Going Clear. I'm aware of the many revelations around what's happening with Scientology and the Church of Scientology that have come through the Leah Remini show, all that. This is distinctly different, but with some overlap, and it's an extraordinary life story. And I really want you to check it out on Monday. Circle it, make a note of it, and be here Monday to hear that conversation. It's a substantial conversation about someone who successfully got away from the Church of Scientology, but the challenges, once he'd somehow gotten away, they were immense. And it's a really terrific story. I mean, terrifically riveting might be the way to put it. So check that out. That will be Monday. All right, Belinda next.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have to I'm sorry, I'm getting over this cold. So I have to do this. Otherwise, it's going to be, so Kim will speak to you for 1 second while I,
I will speak to you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. You
Say
take
something
a little
pithy. Yeah.
You take a little break. Well, I will say that it's a real bummer that we can't get to the news today because I had a whole big lottery thing to do. And now I'm so sad.
Sayonara, sucker.
That's
Wow.
right.
I'm really sorry about that. I didn't,
What?
I didn't know that.
No, so I'll just tell you this story that, you've talked a lot today about Jeffrey Epstein's survivors speaking it to the Congress and then
Sure.
speaking out in front and holding this press conference. And one thing that I don't think we did mention, or maybe you did mention it and I just didn't hear it, is that the survivors say they're going to be releasing their own client list. That
That's
they
right.
are going to take the steps to release the information themselves because they say they know who was there, right? So they can release their own information.
I love that.
And I thought that
love
was
that.
interesting.
Yeah, and I love that. Thank you for underscoring that, because that is a way in which the Epstein information gets out, and it's sort of like, great, if you don't think this is true, then sue me. Let's go to court. And the reason no one will go to court is because these Epstein files would be subpoenable, right? I can demonstrate the veracity of my claims, and the materials I need to demonstrate that, they're in those files, and I'm subpoenaing them. So plus these various, those who victimized these women, these various people, they don't want to get into a court case, and they don't want to be haunted by this any further, just as Trump doesn't want to be haunted by it any further. So I think you make a really a good point when you underscore the fact that these women are going to stay in the picture, and they are going to up the ante even further. The victims know the clients. What does it say? Be aware. Yes. All right. On Wednesdays, we like to showcase news of the environment of the planet. Sometimes there's even good news on a planet that seems to be sadly tumbling toward bad stuff. We do it in a segment we call It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet, stupid.
No. It's the planet, stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet, Stupid, eco-journalist Belinda Weymouth. Hi, Belinda.
Hi, how are you?
All right. Jump on in. What do we have?
Oh, my goodness. I've got such a juicy, lovely, slightly creepy story for you guys today. So we have a huge problem with food waste. It's really enormous, particularly in developed countries like, say, here, the US. At the household level, we throw away 35% of the food that we buy. It's really, really, really crazy. And it is one of the biggest causes of our emissions. So that's at the household level. And, it would include, restaurants, institutions, all this overbuying. And that's before we even count all the food that doesn't even get to the supermarket, because all the ugly misshapen apples and, potatoes, they don't even make it to the supermarket. So it's a huge, huge, huge amount of waste, 35%, guys. So try not to do it. But what about if maggots were eating all that food waste and it wasn't going to the landfill, creating lots of methane? Now, it sounds a little bit disgusting, but...
it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Well, here's the thing. It sort of works on, quite a few levels. The symmetry of it is kind of beautiful for the planet. So we already have, small bug farms in, other places in the world. But France has now got this huge, huge one. They're called InnovaFeed. So it's an innovation. And what they're doing is they're taking, there they are. And if you have a live photo of it, you'll see them squirming. These are the maggots, the big larvae. But what we have these soldiers called black soldier flies. And they used to be just in South America. Now they're on every continent but Antarctica. Can you believe? And the thing about these flies is, like a lot of, flies, they eat pretty disgusting things. So they eat decaying plant and animal waste and also fecal waste. But they're super, super efficient at doing that. And one of the amazing things, and we'll get to this in a minute, is because they have evolved to eat this really, gross stuff, they also create these incredible peptides, these proteins, which eat all the microbial nasties. So they're like little walking antibodies. So that's a thing in their favor. The other thing is they have this really, really fast life cycle. So what they're doing in France is they take millions of flies and they let them get together and do fly business. What is fly business? Well, they spend 12 days together, males and females. They do a lot of the business of making more flies. They don't eat anything. So you don't have to feed them while they're doing it, which is great. They just make lots and lots of babies. By the end of the 12 days, the females lay between 500 to 1,000 eggs. So that's a huge number of eggs. They take the eggs, and then robots, so not even people, have to feed these little guys. But for the next 14 days, they get fed and monitored by robots, and they increase their body mass by 10,000 times. So they start out teeny, teeny, teeny little white egg, and then they end up being that, larvae. And then the maggots get taken out by the robots and they get separated. So their poop goes off to be fertilizer for crops. That's great. So that's circular. And then they keep 5% of the larvae to produce more flies to get back to making, doing fly business and making more babies. And then they take 95% of them and they turn them into protein powder. Now, don't freak out. It doesn't go into your protein powder that you're going to be putting on your shake. No. It goes to feed fish and animals. So it's going to aquaculture. And then also into, we have 600 billion animals that we're raising on the planet at any one time for us to eat. And because agribusiness is so huge and a lot of these animals live in such close quarters, they're very prone to disease. And so one of the things that'll be great is if they're eating any product that's made from these larvae, the larvae will have the antimicrobial, the little antibodies in it. And so farmers who are using any of this stuff for their feedstocks, for their pigs, etc., will save on antibiotic medicine bills. But the other thing that's really, really super important and that I want to mention because I'm a huge lover of the ocean is our aquaculture is really, really tough on the ocean, because it's taking up a lot of ocean space. But the thing that they were using to feed all the trout and the salmon that they're raising, in these farms in the ocean, they were out there fishing for the little guys, for the herring, for the sardines, for the anchovies, to feed the salmon and the trout. And that has a huge ecological toll and takes a lot of carbon emissions to go out there and, fish for all of those little guys. So then what the industries that were providing the food for aquaculture did was they went, oh, well, we'll stop feeding them that. We'll feed them soy products. Well, where do you get soy products from? You get soy products when you deforest the Amazon, you chop down all the trees and you plant soy. So companies that are providing the food for aquaculture are saying, hey, this would be really great because we would cut out, 2 processes that we know are really, have a high carbon footprint, and we would go to this low carbon footprint of the insects, who would also have this antimicrobial, because, fish and fish farms are also very prone to diseases because of how, closely they live together. The thing is, there are a couple of, so those are all the pros of it. The difficulty with insect farming is right now it's expensive, and they need a couple of things. They need a cheap nearby food source. So the one that's the inner feed in France is right beside these industrial, they're growing starch and sugars, and they're feeding basically their byproduct, their waste, into the larval farm, and they're feeding them all. And there's a nearby power plant which is providing, as a byproduct, as its waste, heat, because the larvae need to live, and the flies, they like 86 degrees temperature all the time, especially the larva at the larval stage. And then they like between 70 and 80% humidity. So you need to put the bug farm nearby a food waste source for
This is
them.
wild. So it's all just perfectly configured. Okay.
Yeah. And Albert, if you go through the article, you'll see, how circular it all is. I mean, even to the point where, when they harvest the larva to turn them into the protein powder, their poop gets separated out by the robots to go and fertilize our crops. So it's really kind of a win-win. And also, our oceans, what's one of the, so there are a lot of things that are hurting our oceans, but one of them is overfishing. So this would cut down on overfishing of the small guys, who we need as feedstocks for all the bigger species in the ocean who rely, on the bottom of the food chain. You need all those guys. And then the other thing, what else is the ocean doing? It's absorbing all the excess heat and, greenhouse gases that we are creating. So what if we had bug farms that were cutting down immensely on the greenhouse gases we were creating? Do you love it?
This seems almost too perfect as you were kind of describing it. It's like such a carefully measured relationship between all of these different components to make this happen. It's really extraordinary. And I love the fact that there are robotics involved. So you basically have automated everything. It kind of, you hit the on switch, and I understand it's being monitored, but I'm saying that the process seems to be enormously clean,
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, because you don't want to create a solution that also comes with a problem.
Sure.
And this, what they're doing is, so what these companies have done is they have identified between 30 to 40 other sites where one of these bug farms could be built in Europe. There are 50 sites here in the US, and they just really make sense, because we want to use the heat that's coming out of a power plant. We want to use the waste that's coming out of a corn factory. There's one, Innovafeed has got 2 deals going right now with big food giants here. One is ADM and the other is Cargill, and they're looking at building one of these farms in Illinois, and it would be right beside this corn processing plant. So they would have feedstock right away for the larva. And if we can use the heat as a byproduct, a waste from power plants, but turn it into something that the bugs need, we're using everything, and we're making it circular, and we're not adding to the problem. And we need to use all our waste products. And when we've talked about this before on the show, and Kim, this one's for you, some of these flies and bugs eat plastic. Now, I hope that they break the plastic down into the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which, makes up the molecule that is plastic, the hydrocarbon. I don't know. It'd be a bummer if they just, made it into smaller bits of plastic, to be continued on that note. But we just, we know that the world, and our landfills are just full of, they're full of waste, and tons of it is food. The amazing thing that's happening is, people are even having little bug farms, on their kitchen counter in their houses. I used to have a worm farm outside my back door until I just decided I needed to do composting on a, bigger scale. The worms couldn't keep up with how much compost I was producing.
Well, outside your back door is one thing. On your kitchen counter, to me, is a little much. But your point's well taken, which is that you can start the sustainability at home, I guess, is the idea.
Yeah, Yeah. And the thing is, this is, it's really a no-brainer. I mean, the problem that they're finding right now is that it's a bit yucky, and it's a huge change because you're going from all this soy and all these little fish that we've been using to, feed aquaculture, to feed our agribusiness animals. And it's a pivot, but it's a super sensible pivot. And so, if they can raise the money, which is great that they have these deals with Cargill and ADM here, and if they can, take it up from producing, from dealing with a few, 1,000 tons, or, producing a few thousand tons of this protein powder, to ramp it up to millions of tons. And again, like I say, it's not going to be in your protein shake. We're going to be feeding it to the livestock that we eat. We've got this win-win. So,
it's the scalability seems there, as you say. There are all of these different sites that you identify across Europe. There are all these different sites that you identify across America, and it's sort of it's a sustainability cycle. It seems very, very clean. It's kind of exciting, actually. I would hope that. Sure, there are ripple effects, as you suggested. It's a change, it's a pivot, as you say, but it's an exciting one at that, perhaps. So
I think it's cool. I think it's so cool. I mean, we used to have a restaurant out here near the Santa Monica airport, an Asian restaurant that served different crickets and things that you could eat, and they're an incredible source of protein.
What?
I mean, I know, yummy. They were sort of
Thompson,
spicy.
party of four.
no, it's actually we're not ordering from the cricket menu tonight. Thank you, though.
Yeah. Crunchy, spicy.
Yeah.
But it's like I say, and I feel like a broken record, but we've got to use all the levers. We've got to use everything we can to lower our emissions, to be kind to our planet. We really have to really help our beleaguered ocean. And so if we could stop this overfishing of the little fish, if we could stop the crash that will happen to populations above it because their feedstocks are taken to feed other fish that we then eat, we've got to be right sized, and we've got to remember, we're an animal on this planet too. So we have to make our food chain and how we operate on the planet fit in with all the other things that we absolutely rely on. We
100% agree. And such a good reminder. Yeah. I mean, it's a fragile ecosystem, and so trying to manage sustainably is the ongoing challenge. I'm out of time. I got to refer everyone to Belinda on social media. Waymouth is Waymouth. You can find her here on Wednesdays with this segment. And we're so grateful, always. Thank you, Belinda.
Totally my pleasure.
All right. Belinda Waymouth, everybody. It's The Planet Stupid for today.
More. It's The Planet Stupid.
No. It's the planet, stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
Feels great. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
What up? We are about done. I can't believe it. I know. I am going to put on my little Mark Thompson Show crew socks, which you can get at getmarkmerch.com. There's a full merch line that's very exciting. And for fall, there are cardigan sweaters. It's a pretty cool setup. So in addition to our wonderful seasonal tees, which I was rocking earlier this week, we have the crew socks, the cardigan sweaters, hats for fall. Yeah, as you tee up with all your NFL stuff, or all America, we're bent on the NFL.
Nothing like getting your NFL jersey under the Mark Thompson Show cardigan.
I love that. Yeah, I should have no problem working the NFL jersey under the cardigan.
With the bucket hat, maybe? Maybe the bucket hat, yeah.
Bucket hat's a favorite of Richard Delamater. And all I can say is check it out. The crew socks, my personal fave. The perfect stocking stuffer is a pair of stockings. So there you have it. But with that, I must wrap up. Albert, I don't want to do it, but I've got to do it. Kim, I don't want to do it, but I know you want to get over to your after party scene. Everyone, I want to thank you for participating in the show. Hi, Mark, Kim, and Albert. I love fried locust from Osaka, Mexico. Yummy. You should try it, Mark, says Chaplain Fred with a $5 super chat. Wow. I don't know. I try to avoid eating stuff that, had a mother.
Even locusts?
Yeah, even locusts.
Okay.
Kind of, I don't know. But
I appreciate your dedication.
Richard Dillon, thank you for your service. Richard Dillon Mater says, no, it's 1 already. Now what am I going to do? Yeah, it's 1 on the West Coast, Richard. It's 4 on the East Coast, getting late. It's not fall yet, says Rev P. It's still summer. Yeah, rock the T-shirt. The bucket hat is Richard Delamater approved, apparently. Thank you, Belinda, says Jane O.
Yeah.
Don't do it, Mark, says Zero Sum. I don't know what it is, but I hope I don't do it. Really appreciate everybody's input today. Do I have anything else to do before I wrap up, Albert? I ask you.
I think that's it. It was a great show.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a great show, added with a surprise, the return of John Rothman and a sprinkling of David Cay Johnston. I know. I kind of loved it, too. There will be a show tomorrow, and, in keeping with that, somebody was asking of a legal question. Let me just see if I can find it. Angel in the Bay Area says, survivors and victims, we will not disappear, with a $10 super chat. Yeah, there was some great, I thought, a great display of support for victims today on Capitol Hill. I just made a call to Mike Johnson to go rip him a new one about Epstein and Governor Jeff Landry to protest the new ICE expansion in Louisiana. Left is best, says Kimmy Smith. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Wow. And now I leave you
I'm
to
Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show.
Shadow.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. We'll pick up with the law, the Supreme Court, and more tomorrow with David Katz. Until then, we're out of time. Bye-bye.